Your screen's on as well? Thank you.
Yeah, sorry for the delay, everyone. Let's get started. Before we get to the agenda, I want to make sure we know who is on the board is going to be here for our next meeting, which is Easter Monday, so we can decide whether we're going to have a meeting on Easter Monday or not. You here or not sure?
Current ratio,
No.
50%.
50, you're 50-50, you're a no.
No.
How about this end?
I've been trying to get a flight that would bring me back in time, but there's nothing.
Okay,
Unless I, leave at 4 a.m.
yeah, okay.
I'm here.
You're here. So it's just 2 for certain and 2 no's and 1 maybe. Procedurally, what do we need to do to cancel that meeting?
If you let us know, I'll make the that update on the village website.
Okay, so we're going to cancel that Easter Monday, the 21st, because we just not sure if we're going to have a quorum on that one. All right. Let's first on the agenda is 36 Windmill Lane.
Good evening, board members. Wayne Bruin, O'Shea, Marcinsick and Bruin for the applicant, 36 Windmill Lane, LLC. With me tonight is Lisa Zaloga, our architect, and Ed Armis, our engineer. I understand this board had reviewed preliminarily our site plan. This is phase 3, and that you had chosen to coordinate with other involved agencies, in particular the health department and the zoning board, with respect to seeker, and I think the time period in which your review was over was like the 3rd of April, and that you're now in a position to assume lead agency status, and I would assume that you would also proceed to adopt a negative declaration as soon as possible. Among the plans that you have and the revised plans, I believe we also submitted for the consultant's review. She had specifically requested a copy of the last notice of incomplete application from the health department. Because we've been stating on the record, one of the things the health department will not do is move forward unless and until the village has provided a copy of the village's seeker determination. And that is number 2 on the notice of incomplete application dated April 3rd, 2025. All the other items that were on there, particularly the revisions to the plan, were submitted and back to the health department. So essentially, the last thing for them to proceed with their application and grant the approval is the village's seeker determination. One of the outstanding items they had, and this board may be aware, is the sanitary system that is being, a new sanitary system which is being provided, would extend further into the village property, and an easement. The village board adopted a resolution a year ago to accept an easement, and that easement was reviewed, submitted, and recorded, and a copy submitted to the village and the health department. So the village board is anxious for this to get done. In fact, I believe the mayor has told our client that he would like to see these improvements in the village right away be done before Memorial Day, if possible, to avoid disruption in the village. And thus, we're here asking this board to help us move forward. And the thing to do is to adopt the seeker determination and negative declaration. I have to point out, for the record, we believe it's a type 2 action, but for whatever reason, it's been listed as an unlisted action. The other thing I would point out is our review, and you'll see the latest revisions to our plans. I want to point out a couple things. Number one, our plans were revised a month or so ago, particularly with respect to sewage flow and sewage flow rates. We removed the 2 apartments, which removed a significant amount of sanitary flow. What that did is actually put our application back to a point where there's actually our proposed expansion of the restaurant does not result in an increase in sanitary flow. It's basically neutral in that regard because we removed the higher flow apartments. I'd also point out, this board is well aware, our second phase improvements are underway. There are no further buildings per se. All the drainage that was required by this board on previous site plan was already approved and actually installed. We don't expect any off-site drainage impacts. There's no parking impacts because our application, and we revised our application when we were pointed out a section in the code that indicates for outdoor dining there is no parking requirement under the village code when you're adjacent to a public parking lot. And as such, our application to the zoning board has been revised so that we only seeking a waiver of 4 spaces. And we're ready to pay the fee that's necessary. And as this board is well aware, if you haven't reviewed the comprehensive plan, all these actions in our request are consistent with the comprehensive plan. I have a section, piece of paper you can review at your leisure, but this, I don't know if staff had provided you with any of this. It's what I submitted to the zoning board at their last meeting. It's basically a summary of the recommendations of the comprehensive plan. Number 1, you know this corner of the village is looking for redevelopment. The comprehensive plan actually highlights and recommends that any redevelopment in the village were to occur, the most appropriate locations would be the lots fronting on Nugent and Windmill Lane. The residents that were noted in the comprehensive plan study indicated there were need for more things to do in the evening, such as restaurants, bars, and other entertainment, and that the residents were supportive of making outdoor dining a permanent feature since COVID and improve the downtown vibrancy, and support local businesses. And apart from regulatory changes, the village should support physical improvements to the public realm as well as investments by private business to provide outdoor dining in an attractive and uniform way. And lastly, it specifically recommends that where the public off-street parking is that we support and be as flexible as possible in the downtown area and encourage fees in lieu of providing public parking, especially when you're within 100 feet of a public lot, which this property is. So I make those recommendations, and I would hope this board would move forward as soon as possible with any secret determination. If you have any questions, be happy to answer those, or our architects or our engineer.
Any questions? Making progress. Just want to make sure we have the correct fact set here. At our last meeting, I think the planning board determined that the planning board is the lead agency for the SECRA determination, correct?
That's right.
I know that the plan has moved around a little bit and some things were resubmitted since our last meeting. I'd like to ask H2M to respond to some of the more technical comments that you made, just to make sure that everybody's on the same page with respect to health department and some of the other, specifically health department, some of the other things that you mentioned.
Yeah,
as
I would
well.
say, and that would be great, but, as you know, health department approval isn't necessary for site plan approval. It's necessary for getting a building permit, and in particular where the health department, we're not designing a parking lot with paving or drainage or anything that would otherwise interfere with a layout, which this board would be concerned about. The parking's off-site in the village parking lot. There's nothing on site that this board has jurisdiction over that part of it.
So this is the planning board, right?
Correct.
And we'd like to see the plan for this
Absolutely.
property and how
We've had that.
and how it impacts the surrounding area. The one thing that I recall was that there was that alleyway just to the north of Shippey's that accesses that the major part of it, goes by the bank there, and there was a drain there that the last plan showed being covered up, but yet no plan to manage runoff for that area to the north of, along that alleyway. And frankly, that's a concern of ours, is just what's gonna happen there if we're closing off that storm drain that's right there in that driveway.
That's out on the village property, right?
Correct.
Okay.
But was there anything else that I'm missing?
Yeah, so I think that was one of the site plan issues, that this project's complicated because of the easement on village property. There's a lot of site work that's actually occurring on village property on that easement, including removing a catch basin. But that does require, drainage plans for where that is going to be rerouted and how that drainage is.
Lisa, can you pull the mic a little closer so we
sorry.
can pick you up? Thank you.
Drainage plans for how that's going to be rerouted and where that how much capacity is it handling now, and does maybe the area is graded in such a way and there's existing capacity to contain it, but I don't have anything to support that conclusion. As far as there was some of the comments still, with what the health department in their comment letters suggested were some of the same inconsistencies I was still seeing with the precise number of seats, being one version of seats. It's a small discrepancy, but they've been changing. There have been slight modifications, so now it looks like physically we see 70 seats, but it's saying 69, and this does impact the
That was
calculation.
corrected.
All
That
right,
was
so-
corrected with the submission to the zoning board as well.
Oh, was it? So there is an updated one that it's corrected, so it's consistent?
Yes.
Because the most recent I saw, still counted 70 seats in that space. So I'll look to make sure I'm looking at the most updated version. Yeah, I mean, as from a seeker standpoint, the major, the environmental concerns that would stand out in a project like this would be the impacts to groundwater and surface water from the septic, and presuming they're able to get a plan that's approved by the Suffolk County Department of Health that would mitigate those potential impacts. And then the drainage issue of ensuring that there's not, that the drainage is sufficiently dealt with, and there's not a drainage issue created by the removal of the catch basin in that low-lying parking lot. As far as the other impacts, I'm not particularly concerned about community character. It seems consistent with the community character of the downtown area. The architectural review board's reviewing the visual impacts. So those would be the ones of concern, and I think at least for the sanitary flow, that the Suffolk County Department of Health would be the means of mitigating that one.
So, Mr. Bruin, I think the planning board loves the plan, right, of the property. I mean, we've been saying that for a while, that it's a beautiful plan, it really improves the area down there, and we're all for it. But this planning board is also very much a dot your i's, cross your t's type planning board before we're going to move forward. So until we see what, I'm hesitant to use the word complete, but it's small c complete package that addresses all the issues, so we can make an informed decision, and it's not sort of a death by 1,000 cuts type approach, we're going to hold off. Okay, so the ball is really in your court to get us that information.
Can I just ask our consultant whether or not,
Yeah.
do the plans show what's happening with that drainage pool?
Your Honor. The drainage in that area, the easement, is all septic, that area. And there's certain requirements and separations from storm drainage, catch basins, leaching pools from septic. So there can't be any septic within that whole, drainage within that whole area, post-septic. The area too, since the village is also proposing 7 parking spots in there, that's gonna create a high spot, which is gonna have to, because there can't be any drainage within those parking spots that are proposed, that's gonna be a high spot between the proposed parking across the alleyway towards the restaurant the museum property. And then from there, it's gonna be the high spot, and then it's gonna go towards the south, where there is an existing catch basin, and to the north and northeast, which is where the new retention area was made by the bank, and also going out to Windmill Lane, where there is existing catch basins there. So basically, that's the way it's going to have to be. It's just going to be a high spot that bleeds out. But there is lawn area, and it's just the parking area in the alleyway.
So do we have anything that shows how that's gonna work, or we just,
Now, these are sanitary plans, so there's not grading, curb heights, things like that.
Yeah.
You know. And as for the sanitary capacity, when we get the sanitary approval, it's not going to say the restaurant's approved for X amount of seats because we're grandfathered into a flow. So it's going to say we're approved for 1,323 gallons per day.
right?
So the going back and forth about 69, 70 seats, it doesn't really matter in regards to the sanitary, for the septic review with the health department.
But isn't that how they get to the calculation, is through the capacity of the restaurant?
No, not really, because
The
The-
plans showed.
plans show it, but either way, it's still, we're working into a number that we're backing into the 1,323 gallons per day. So if it's 69 seats inside, we're taking away an exterior seat out in the patio. So either way, it's not adding in additional seating, it's still backing into that one number because we took out the apartments and gained that volume that way.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we're saying different, I don't think we're having, I think the issue is just that the plans match the calculations so that it's clear that you're meeting the requirements of not exceeding that number, because we know that that's the max you'll be allowed.
Yeah, the septic plan has 69 for the indoor seating, and it matches Lisa's plan, 69 indoor seating.
Okay, I'll look again, because I did not see the revised indoor seating plan, so.
As far as the drainage, what would the village need to show exactly what Ms. Lawrence just described? That that drainage pool is being removed. Oh, by the way, the village board has asked us to construct 10 new parking spots in that area where it's, you know, and we're not getting credit for that at all as far as parking calculations are concerned. But that being said, that's drainage out in the drainage parking lot, a village parking lot. I don't know what we would do
So
for
you
us
have-
to demonstrate that the village is going to retain or deal with its stormwater runoff.
So there's a couple of pieces here. One is there's existing drainage in that lot, so it's the capacity of that existing drainage for what is proposed and what is existing. So, you know, and that, of course, is the existing drainage minus the catch basin that has to be removed.
Well, it's actually a catch box, it's not a basin.
Okay.
So it's a catch box that's piped over in the direction of the museum property, but when that catch box was inspected, it was all silted over. So the pipe, if it is in there, it's buried and you can't be seen. That's why it always fills up on the corner of Shippey's, because there's no capacity in a 2x2 box
Right.
to hold any water. So that's why there's always a standing puddle there. And so you're not losing a catch leaching structure. You're only losing a catch box, which doesn't drain anywhere. So regrading that whole area actually helps the problem that is existing. But there can be additional leaching pool, one leaching pool put in, which would offset the new village parking area. It just has to be remotely piped, so it's away from the septic system.
So have you had discussions with trustees about who's gonna do that? The highway department? Are you guys doing that, or
There was
what's
talk
happening?
with Steve Phillips initially about the layout
Yeah.
and the concept there. So, but we put that on our plan just to reflect what the village was looking at doing.
Yeah.
That's, I don't know if that's been set in stone, but that was their intent, to gain some parking in on that corner. So people weren't actually parking on the, outside the curb, where people were trying to make the turn going towards, like Job's Lane, coming in off of Windmill.
Yeah.
That was a little bit of a problem. So this way, the parking set back, so the people are out of the travel lane, going north and south across by the museum property, back of rotations. So it's all clear there.
Yeah, you lost me on that one.
Okay. No, basically, the travel lane between rotations and the museum property,
Yeah.
people were parking alongside the curb.
Yeah.
They just got rid of that parallel parking there. but by doing
That
the
parallel
area-
parking that's by the grassy area where rotation stores the bikes.
Correct. This new parking area would be inside the grass area.
Right.
So people outside that travel lane.
Right. So I guess the question that I'm asking is, I think we need clarity as to how the storm runoff is going to be handled back there based on all the things that are happening. Right?
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's whether you guys are taking responsibility for that, or the trustees, or the highway department, but, you know, in order for us to make a secret determination,
Well,
Right, I think
it's
that's
really
part of the
contingent on
consideration.
I think it's contingent on the village using that parking, because one, if they're gonna create that parking area, basically, they're gonna increase the amount of runoff within that whole area.
right,
So,
and it's already underwater when it rains now.
yeah, so,
Right.
but that's,
So
if
now's
they're
the
not gonna
time
do
to
it,
fix it,
yeah,
yeah,
so.
right? So we're gonna try and fix that, right?
It is, well, it really should be done when septic is done, which is a very short window. So
Right.
if the village wants to do it, or we can make a stop, and so you can rip the curb out and then make that little park
So-
circle later on.
So look, I think the consensus here is to move forward on this as quickly as we can, as soon as we have, you know, everything in front of us that we can make an accurate determination. So as soon as you can get us that information, you know, we can bring this to a vote.
Yeah, unfortunately, are you meeting next week?
Uh,
That's the time period we have.
So I will call a special meeting. If you can get it back that fast and we have attendance,
Okay.
you know, we'll schedule something to help get this done. Because I know, look, it's a great,
I was
in
gonna
my
say, you
opinion.
just canceled your meeting in 2 weeks.
Well, that's the.
In which case,
That's a
if we
normally,
go a month,
yeah,
we're-
that's a
we're dead
normally
in the
scheduled
water.
meeting, but we're more than happy to call a meeting. You know, there's certain notice periods that we've got to deal with, but we're more than happy to do a non-regularly scheduled meeting to help move this thing along, as long as we have all the information we need to make an accurate decision. So if that's what you want to do, let us know. We'll make sure that we get a quorum here to help you out, but, you know, look, we're with you to
We'd
try
like to
and,
do that.
we're with you to try and push this along, because I know you want to open it by,
It's all turning on the
season.
health department.
Yeah.
So absent your seeker determination, they're not gonna move forward at all.
does anybody disagree with that view here?
Can
No?
I
Okay.
ask a question about the health department letter? In addition to asking for the seeker determination from the village, it also asked for the approved plans. Is it your understanding that they need the full approval from the village?
No.
Because that was in that line, that point two, it actually said copy of town-approved plan showing sanitary layout.
They want to see the sanitary plan. We submitted the easement to them, but the sanitary plan, which is actually what they're approving, is the same plan that's approved by the village board, so.
Oh,
So they're asking for when they say a copy of town-approved plan showing sanitary layout,
I'm
they're
not sure
asking,
exactly, but I would doubt it's a chicken and the egg. We never get there.
yeah. Well, it's,
You never
Well-
do site plan approval before you get final health department. You get health department before you get your building permit.
yeah, this is why I'm asking, because I'm like, if you're saying it's the seeker holding you up, I see two things there that look like they need town approval.
We'll
So-
clarify that with the health department, but again, I would say that a seeker determination shouldn't be contingent on what the health department is doing or not, if you have an understanding we're in compliance with their standards, number one. Number two is, I don't believe they're gonna hold up our application once they receive your seeker determination. We'll talk to the health department about that.
Yeah, but look, we will work with you to move
We
as
appreciate
quickly
that.
as we can
Really.
to get this approved, as long as we have all the information we need.
so if you get the site plan, it's gonna go to H2M for review, and then back to you comments before the next meeting?
Well, we're gonna get this information on the drainage to them, and the question is, how and where are you gonna, could you schedule a meeting tentatively pending that? I mean, you're not gonna meet to have, to do a schedule.
Yeah, so Alex, remind me what the notice periods are for a meeting on this? I mean, do we have to, you know, how quickly can we officially schedule something?
I'd have to double check what our meeting requirements are. That this is not a new public hearing,
We should keep them
Yeah,
in.
it's not a
but
public
we-
hearing, so.
but they are, I believe, next on the zoning board for April 24th. So I don't think anything would happen before then.
The other thing to consider with the seeker is that one of the pieces we needed to clarify tonight was who was is this part of this application, or is the village dealing with the drainage and the grading of that lot? If you feel comfortable moving forward with the seeker determination, it's also, the language of the negative declaration could reflect that it's contingent upon
Health Department.
the health department approval of the septic plan and the drainage being adequately addressed. If their plan, because that's our understanding that they're going to address those things, and if they don't, we would have to reopen the seeker because the plan would no longer match what the
Yep.
planning board had evaluated.
Yep.
That's fair.
That would be great, because the mayor is still investigating how that parking is gonna lay out. So to
Yeah,
hold
the
us
mayor
up,
has-
to hold us
Yeah, I'm
up for
still
that.
Yep. So,
is-
so I think we just coordinate closely on this. So as soon as you can get us something, get it to H2M, get it to Alex. He'll coordinate with us, right?
Okay.
And
I think
we'll-
he just walked by. If you can
I
grab
know,
him and
I
then
know.
come back
He's
in,
like, I
why don't
can't
you
do
do
it
it
now.
now? Just talk to him.
Yeah, he'd
Just talk to
appreciate
him.
that.
Just talk to him about like what's going on. Maybe
So,
he can help you.
and, we'll get something scheduled as soon as we possibly can.
Thank you.
Right.
Is there any other further questions?
Anyone else? No? Good.
Just-
Bill, good?
Just
Okay.
Easter gets in the way.
Well, how many do you
Unfortunately, I gotta
need?
go away for Easter in a couple of days.
Is anybody able to change their plans and be here?
Let's see
Just
what the
rather than-
timing is. So, is that good?
Yes, thank you.
Yep. Okay, moving right along, let's go to RRFACF. Mr. Bennett.
Good evening. It's nice to be here on this typical early spring East End day. When I moved back home years ago, I said, "Oh, now I know why I was so depressed in high school in the spring." In any event, my name is John Bennett. I represent very proudly the applicant, the Fowler family. Bailey Larkin from my firm is with me, Vin Gaudiello from the Rayner Group, and the Fowler family, Midge and her two sons, and some in-laws, Ricky's wife, Marissa, and Ricky's father-in-law, Mark Epley. I'm sure you all know. This is a 27.89 acre parcel, and it's located at the intersection of Fowler and Wickapog. I guess you all have it, but I'll put it down on the, you've all seen this. So it's in an R80 zoning district. If you go down towards, when you first start at Wickapog, that's in a 3-acre zone. But as you get down towards the end of Wickapog, there's a 2-acre zone. So if this property were developed per the zoning district, it would yield 12 lots. We're proposing a 7-lot subdivision. Bailey, if you have this was a yield plan, which was part of the sketch plan review process. So we're 12 conforming lots, we're at 7. And this is as a result of at least a 2-year process before this board. This 7-lot plan represents about 58% of the allowed as of right development on the property. The original application filed during the sketch plan process proposed 10 lots. And again, as a result of an over 2-year process, the applicant voluntarily reduced the subdivision to a 7-lot plan. And then sketch plan approval was granted on the 7-lot plan on July 15, 2024. I think it's important for all the board members to remember that this was a long process for sketch plan approval. It was a subject of a public hearing, and it was agreed that the applicant and the board and all the consultants would take our time and come up with a configuration and an open space design that we could move forward with. It was a very thorough and deliberate process with a lot of back and forth. And not only the public hearing, but there were many appearances before the board. So what is before the board is some very significant concessions by the owner to really come to an agreement to allow a smooth application process and some voluntary concessions. I don't think, if you've been involved with subdivision review in any meaningful way, you'll know that if the applicants will try to work with the board to come up with something that the board can feel comfortable with and move the application right along. That's why you see a 7-lot plan. If this is going to be something candidly that would be mired in the seeker process, we might as well come back with a full yield plan. And I think that's implicit in when people come in with a reduced density plan. It certainly is. I mean, it's actually specifically recognized in the Southampton Town Code, but it's been done in the village of Southampton in a less formal but nevertheless meaningful manner. So we're at about 58% of the potential development on the lot. I'm going to talk a little bit about the subdivision that I handled to the south, which is a 2-lot subdivision, but it's a max yield subdivision. It's a 3-acre lot and a 2-acre lot, which is also on former Fowler property. It was on former Fowler property. This is Fowler property. There's a 25% ag reserve area, and at the time of the filing of the subdivision map, the village had no mandatory cluster provisions, none, 0. The master plan suggested an 25% open space, which has been achieved here. But the village law that sets up the mandatory 25% does not apply to this application. It's been grandfathered by that law by its express terms. Local Law 28 of 2024 says, this proposed law shall not apply to any application which is made and is pending or in the approval process as of the date of resolution was approved, authorizing the local law to be noticed for public hearing. So despite the fact that this subdivision got in before Local Law 28 of 2024, it merely had to be filed before that date, we have nevertheless provided 25%. When I say open space, agricultural reserve, it's important that everyone remember that this is not open space like you would see up in the Moraine, where the property either sits with a homeowners association or gets deeded to the municipality. This is part of the town, the villages, the county's program to try to maintain agriculture. So these are agricultural reserve parcels that are retained by the owner, and the farming continues. One of the things I'm going to have Vin Gordiello from Rayner Group talk about is how we've tried to create a 2-step process so that we can continue to farm some of the property that's outside of the open space by way of these temporary cul-de-sacs. They're a very, very common plan. I don't know, I guess I've seen them for so many years. They're called reverters, and it's sort of like a springing road. So this is a reverter. It's called the cul-de-sac reverter. And once this road is continued down to the north, as it were, this cul-de-sac goes away. It's a reverter, and this road is opened up. But the whole idea is that if you made us put the road in now, in full, which would be, if this was a developer, that's probably what would happen, because the developer would just like to mark lots of the market as quickly as possible. The Fowler family wants to continue to see if they can farm a good portion of this property that is not contained in the voluntary 25% open space, and thus the staging. But I'm going to let Vince Gordiello tell you exactly how that works. So that's important for everybody to understand. So again, that reduction from the 12 lot yield and the original 10 proposed lots, and now 7 lots, it's even less than 60% of the yield. The applicant and Rich Warren of InterScience and I met with multiple brokers and real estate professionals because we wanted to see exactly what we were giving up, and it was the unanimous finding of the brokers that the 10-lot plan on a cluster would yield more than the proposed 7-lot yield. So this is a very significant and voluntary economic concession. It's a concession because we heard that's what the board wanted to see. We decided to be accommodative. So it's a significant concession. And I candidly, given my long experience in the subdivision process, unimpressed with anyone who thinks that anything other. I'm not saying this board is set that far from it, but I'm unimpressed with anyone who thinks this isn't a massive concession. It's a little bit, only a little bit more than half the development. We've essentially upzoned this property from 2 acre, in effect, to a 4 or 4.5 acre property. So that's massive. There was a former board member who was talking about what the board was giving us, and I was scratching my head saying, that's interesting. My client's the fee owner of this property. The give has been the reduction from 12 to 10. So again, I'm going to last, if I can, just interrupt my presentation to ask Vin Gaudiella explain how we are suggesting that we stage the building of this road so that the Fowlers can continue to farm. Could you just explain that? Because I think it's something that, it's a concept that I'm very familiar with, but oftentimes people see roads put in all in one shot, and if you could explain this to the board, how we're talking about this. Introduce yourself.
Good afternoon or good evening, members of the board. My name is Vincent Cordiello. I'm principal with the Rayner Group, and we are the engineers and surveyors retained by the Fowlers on this application. What we've done with these right-of-ways, or the right-of-ways that are proposed, being that this is a phased project, what we've elected to do is create right-of-ways for the lots 6 and 7 via easements. In the planning staff memo, they've identified those lots as being landlocked. That is not the case. Access to those lots would be provided with an easement over a portion of those lots. So should we move forward and build out phase 2 within a portion of lots 4, 5, and 6, and 7, there would be right-of-way easements on all those in a configuration that would provide a 50-foot wide right-of-way with a cul-de-sac at the end. The size of the cul-de-sac is in accordance with the design standards of the village code. And this would be the means for us to provide access to those lots, as opposed to creating a specific right-of-way where the lot areas of lots 6, 7, 5, and 4 are not included in the right-of-way, and that there would be a separate parcel that consists of a right-of-way. And the question then becomes, should the development of phase 2 not happen, what happens with that area? And whether that just remains a right-of-way and a separate tax map parcel. I did have conversation with the village's planning consultant, and she voiced to me that that is not her preference for us in proposing that. She voiced that it was not the planning board's position to accept that means. And, you know, that's why we're here to kind of explain why we proposed it that way. You have a lot of properties in the village which fee title is owned to the property owner, and there's a right of way over it. And there's rights to pass and repass. With any private road, there's always the question of who owns the underlying land. If you have a straight road that runs down, it's private, well, everyone owns up to the center line of the road, and they take their property lines and bring it to the center line of the road. Because this road is not one straight road and there's a bit of a turn to it, those lines are not exactly straight to the center line of this right-of-way. And that's why we're proposing it as such.
And again, the whole idea for that is to allow for the farming to continue on lots 6 and 7 and 5, so that we're not building the road at one point. Now, let me explain something about this right-of-ways. There are a couple of ways to have a road. The village law states that you can't require someone to dedicate a road to the public. Oftentimes, you'll see subdivision maps where the town will want an offer of dedication, or the village will want an offer of dedication, and the subdivider does not have to do that. So the fee title, and that's entirely within the law. So the fee title remains in private ownership. This is going to be a private road. You can't require me to dedicate it. So what happens Typically on a private road, everyone owns, if you look at typical deed, you own to the center of the right-of-way. The owner on either side owns to the center of the right-of-way. It may come as a surprise to some people, but they're actually public roads, actual roads in municipal road systems where the public owns nothing more than an easement, a mere easement over those roads, even though they're in the municipal's highway system. But the fee goes from either side of the road. Why are we doing this? If you require us to put the road in full, then obviously it becomes difficult to farm a farm that's bisected by a road. So there's got to be a way to do this.
Are we allowed to ask questions?
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong,
Right.
but I thought we always discussed doing the roads here in a two-phase
Yeah,
approach.
yeah,
So
yeah.
why now are we talking about the village planning board requiring you to put the entire road in at the beginning?
I wanted to explain it. There was some back and forth about some concerns with planning staff. and
Well, I think it was the method of the right
just
of way.
the method of getting there.
Like how is, the term landlocked was used in the planning memo. None of
Which we
these
disagree with.
none of these lots are landlocked.
So what I don't understand then is,
And in all fairness, the
Easement-
memo comes after about, a new staff member, the memo comes after about 2 years.
Yeah,
of
and
agreeing
again,
this was
I-
gonna be phased.
I thank the planner for making herself available, and we've had discussions about it, and we're here to speak through what the intents are, what the planning board is looking for.
so,
If
sorry,
I could
Lisa,
just
go ahead.
chime in for 1 second, just to clarify that the sketch plan that was approved didn't do this. So this is not new, the request isn't new.
Right. The sketch plan, which we did not draw, the sketch plan showed a right-of-way, a separate tax map parcel
Correct.
that was a right-of-way that was used to serve as access to,
Understood.
I'll say 4, 5, 6, and
But
7.
if that road, if it was a right-of-way, and that road was done in two phases, as opposed to what you're talking about here is an easement approach as opposed to a right-of-way approach, the former approach would not impact your ability to farm.
However we get there, I think we're getting mired down in an unnecessary argument. However we get there.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to make sure that no one thinks these are landlocked. Why would you create parcels that are landlocked? The whole idea is, once that road goes down there, they're not. So, in order to take care of someone's concern of them being landlocked, we're talking about them as an easement. But if you're talking about, that this will be staged.
But,
Yeah.
there's a preference for right-of-way as opposed to easement in.
No, you're thinking
comp-
of the preference, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But these will not be flag lots. These aren't flag lots. You don't have to worry about that.
Lot 7 is.
No, it's not.
Looks like a flag to me.
No, it's not. It's more than 40 feet wide. We specifically made it more than 40 feet wide, and that's the definition of a flag lot.
And if I can chime in that the page 95 of the comprehensive plan update does specify that flag lots should be discouraged, but if permitted, the access to the lot be by ownership and not by easement over another's property.
Yeah, well,
So
that's
there
what-
is a request for no easements for access to lots.
That's what's done here. This is not this is a 40-foot wide front. It's not, by definition, it's not a flag lot.
John, John.
And by the
I
way,
don't want to disagree, because I think we're talking about the same thing. I
Okay.
just don't understand why, I thought we had, it seems like we're going back over old territory here. I thought we'd agreed to
I thought we had it as
right
well.
away through there, and you can do it in two phases. We've already agreed
we're going
to
to find some way to do it. I
We've
just,
already agreed to that.
I had to bring to the board's attention that we're not creating landlocked
I
lots. That's all.
understand, but we don't like easement, access by easement, which is what you're doing, what you're now talking about.
No, it's not. What you're going to have
Didn't you
here,
just say easement?
what you're going to have here,
It's a right-of-way easement.
it's a right-of-way easement. The roads that you travel down on the public roads, half of them were created by dedication. The roads in the village of Southampton, half of them are created by dedication. Let me finish. In other words, the municipality owns fee title to the road.
Yep.
The other half of them, the municipality owns a right-of-way, and the owners own to the center section. That happens with all private
But
roads.
this is with private roads, because
Yeah.
we're still
This
talking
is a
about
private-
private
we're
road
talking
here.
about private
Yeah,
road.
it's private road.
I think we're going to find a way to do this. I mean, it's just a question of,
So I don't understand why.
because
why-
I was
why you
concerned when
care.
somebody said we were creating landlocked parcels, which we're not.
Okay.
That's all.
So also, if I could just point out that the first part of the road, which is proposed to be a private road, is not done in this fashion. So it only shifts when we get to the second portion, that it's by easement and not by a dedicated private road that would be owned by an HOA.
This says right here on it, proposed private road right-of-way.
Right.
It's really, we're talking
Yes,
about
but-
semantics
no,
now.
no.
Are you trying to,
stop,
inhibit
John.
us from doing this
I
two-stage
want to
development?
understand the statement.
John.
Am I
please,
misunderstanding
don't go
where
there.
the
Wait,
lot lines are
right.
drawn? My understanding is that the road is not within the lots 1, 2, and 2, that first part of the road.
Correct.
But that it becomes part of the lots after that. And that's the only discrepancy, is the planning board is requesting that it be a dedicated private right-of-way that the lots come up to, and that then could be owned in common in an HOA and maintained by that HOA. And it solves a lot of issues going forward if it's done in that fashion.
I'm not going to create,
but-
I'm not going to create an HOA where I don't need to do it. I don't need an HOA for the open space because it's going to be held by the owner.
So John, let me ask you,
If you want us to create, this in some way that's separate, the lots are so over zoning,
time out.
doesn't matter.
So if I understand what Lisa's saying, your approach with respect to how the roads are, the property that the road sits on, from the Phase A road to the Phase B road, are different structures. Is that what you're saying?
Excuse me?
Are different structures, different ownership structures?
Exactly.
Why wouldn't they be the same ownership
Because we
structure?
know we're going to build phase one.
Right, but when you do Phase 2, why wouldn't you do it with the same ownership structure? Why complicate it, right? Let's just do it the same way. I thought that's what we talked about
Okay,
before.
if there's a way to get there, we'll get there. I think that's,
Okay.
we're really now
I
spending
think we're
far
on
too
the
much
same
time on
page on this
something.
one, yeah.
Everyone knows we're going to phase this, we'll figure out a way to
Yeah.
do it, to your satisfaction.
Perfect. Everybody good?
Yes.
Everybody good?
Yes.
Good with that?
I
Okay.
Somebody's got to do the difference without a
And
distinction.
the way that the reverter works as well, we'll work that through you guys as long with council.
Yeah, I mean, look, from my perspective at least, I think everybody here will agree with me. We spent a tremendous amount of time on the preliminary sketch plan
Yep.
to expedite, this conversation and the final plat approval
Yep.
conversation.
Yeah,
So
no.
really no reason to go over old territory, because all the stuff we've talked about.
It's just how we get there.
Good.
But I think we're all understanding what we're
Okay.
going to phase this. So we're also bringing in a plan with built-in 125-foot, 150-foot, and 250-foot setbacks right up front. So here you're going to have a 125-foot buffer. I'm going to be quick to add that the buffer of the subdivision to the south, which is the 91 Fowler subdivision, which we handled. I think we're going to hear from those owners with their counsel, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that before. That has a 25-foot buffer on it, 25 feet. I'm well aware of it because I handle the subdivision, and that's all the planning board required.
Okay.
25-foot buffer. And there's, if you could, did you have an area? There's lawn all the way down to the 25 feet. So we're coming in from a term of a relative lack of impact on what these things are for. You can see, this is the adjoining subdivision on former Fowler property. It's lawn down to that 25-foot buffer. We're proposing a 125-foot landscape setback, which means everything seaward, as it would call, of that 125-foot buffer will be either let go, or it will be an active revegetation. And then 200-foot setbacks for the wastewater and 150-foot for the construction. And again, It's important to note in terms of people's, if I may, bona fides in terms of objectance, that the subdivision to the south has, not only does it have a 25-foot buffer, merely a 25-foot buffer, but this entire subdivision here to the south is on 5.2 acres. This is on 5.2 acres. It's a max yield subdivision. It's a 87,000 square foot lot and 139,000 square foot lot. So again, that's a max yield subdivision. We're talking about a 68% subdivision. I know the subdivision very well. I handled it for the then owners, Lifton and Green. So that's very important. The lots will have some of their improvements, as do a large number of lots in the village. Essentially, all waterfront and wetland lots will be developed in an A zone, which is one of the less restrictive zones. Not all of them, 1 and 2 are out of the zone, but this is not a problem. One simply needs to comply with the elevation standards in the zone. We've agreed to a notice covenant, which I always sort of scratch my head. Notice covenant, you're charged with knowledge of the law, but we'll put a covenant on there that tells people they'll be building in the
That was a requirement of the Suffolk County Planning
that
Board,
was the
right?
only requirement.
Yeah, exactly.
It was the only
Okay.
requirement.
Yep.
There was a report, and I want to tell you this, these are sort of the subculture things that you don't get to see unless you experience them yourself. I sat down at the table at the planning commission, and the chairwoman said to me, "There's some stuff in this report, but don't worry, there's only one condition." And they have to make it a condition.
Yep.
The planning commission has to make something a condition in order to have it to have any weight. If the planning commission makes something a condition, then if you don't like it,
Tough.
you have to override it with a
supervise,
majority of
super-
+1.
Right.
That's the only condition in it,
Yep.
and it's a notice covenant. How could I have a problem with a notice covenant? You're just telling people that they have to obey the law, they have to build according to the elevation requirements, which if you're on the wetlands, or you're on the ocean, or you're on one of the bays in the village of Southampton, or arms of the Shinnecock Bay, you're building to the elevation requirements. Let's talk a little bit about seeker. This is an unlisted action, which, unlike a type 2 action, there's no legislative finding or regulatory finding that there's likely to have a significant impact. What's a subdivision that falls under the type 1 list? That's a subdivision of the 6 CRRNY 617.4. Where do you look at a subdivision where there's been a legislative finding or a DEC finding that it's a type 1 action, which means it's likely to have a significant environmental impact? Under that section, 50 lots not hooked up to public water or public sewer service. So that's when there's a legislative finding that it's likely to have significant environmental impact. And significant environmental impact is a term of art. People get very, very subjective with that. Oh, it's going to have a significant environmental impact. Well, it only has a significant environmental impact if it meets that standard of the law. It's not a subjective thing. So I'm going to talk a little bit about seeker and process in a bit, but more about it. But I think you'd be hard pressed. I'm just going to come right out and say that with to do anything other than give a negative declaration to such a reduced density subdivision. I was over in Southold the other day. I have a client that's doing has a 500-acre parcel, and we're doing about 75 lots over there. And one of the staff members said, "Well, what about the yield is 140 lots?" And one of the staff members said, "Well, we might pause deck this." And both the planner from Southold and council looked at them and said, "On a reduced density subdivision like that, not on your life." Because what you've done is you've taken away the entire incentive for people to come in with such a significantly reduced density. If you're going to put somebody through the whole seeker's sausage making process, they're going to go back and say, "Okay, we'll do a max yield because we're going to take 2 years out of my hide. That's what we're going to do." So in any event, that's something that's always been understood by statute in the town, but understood by custom in the village. Let's look how seeker has been applied on the adjoining properties. The Halsey Family Limited Partnership, which is if you're heading down to this property, if you look to the left, to the north, just before you get to the beginning of the subdivision, there's some open space, and then there's some lots to the north. And what people don't realize is that a lot of that open space ain't open space. It's buildable lots. It's just the Halsey family has decided not to build out on those at the time, probably, estate planning. So that was a 12-lot subdivision, received the negative declaration. Right across the pond, a 5-lot subdivision, the GRH Family Limited Liability Company subdivision, right across Phillip Pond, located on the north side of Wickapog Road. Located on the south side of Wickapog Road, received the negative declaration. I was sort of interested and sort of chuckled a little bit for someone to suggest that these are unrelated subdivisions. You are under the line of case law. You're supposed to. I mean, things are different on properties. That's why properties are unique. But we've got a pattern here that's been established that it's hard to step away from. And then again, there was a neg deck on this 2-lot max yield subdivision, which immediately butts the property to the south. So we were the village. Even though they were filed on Friday, there were a couple of letters of objection that were filed. I want to talk a little bit about those. There was a letter of objection filed by David McMaster, who is representing Arlene Albright, and there was a letter filed by, let's see, where is that? Thank you. Tiffany Frigente, who is representing this property here, which is the waterfront one. It's owned by 91 Fowler LLC. I think the principal is a guy by the name of Spider. Only because I took part in the closing as well as the subdivision. So what do they say? I didn't see any substantive comments, but they're essentially some procedural arguments. One of the arguments is that we submitted some amended plans, which were pretty small beer items, in response to some comments of the planning staff. And we were told that that didn't meet the 15-day time limitation, but that's a bold misreading of that statute.
Hey, John, sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
So on those procedural arguments,
Right.
we've reviewed these
Okay.
with our counsel,
Okay.
and we do not think there were any procedural, and correct me if I'm wrong, we do not believe there were any procedural mistakes. So
Okay, I'll move it
You
along,
can
but I
move
do
this
want to say
along.
I do want to say one thing, because this is really important, if I may. I just want to make this one procedural statement. And what I like to do is to be, I like to make concessions sometimes so that even assuming arguendo, the procedural arguments have some merit, let's take them off the table. So this is what I'm suggesting. What they're saying is, I think it's strange, what they're saying in a way is, you should have made a determination of significance before the public hearing. Which always makes me sort of scratch my head, although the statute is cloudy. But you should have made a determination of significance before you scheduled the public hearing, which to me, if I'm objecting to something, I want to be heard before the seeker determination. But that's what they're saying. You should have scheduled the public hearing before you made a determination of significance. Okay, fine. Keep the public hearing open, which you were probably going to do anyway. Rare is the public hearing on a major subdivision that gets closed the first time. Do your seeker. It's an unlisted action. The coordination is not mandatory, but you've got to help. You only have one other agency. You have the health department. Coordinate with them. They're not going to want lead agency. In 40 years, I've never seen them take lead agency. The Office of Ecology, the Health Department, I've never seen them, the initiative land use lawyers will tell you they never do secret, but you have to ask them if they want to be the lead agency, send it to them, coordinate with them, declare yourself the lead agent. I think, God willing, you'll see that and agree with me that this should be issued a negative declaration. Continue the hearing until after the negative declaration, God willing, or however you deal with secret, but I think it should be a negative declaration. Keep it open, and then after the negative declaration, people can come back and the public can tell you more about what they think. What that does is that cures the alleged procedural problem here. So again, do your seeker work, declare yourself, coordinate. Health department's not going to want to be the lead agent. Declare yourself the lead agent, and again, I think a neg deck is appropriate here. But all the while, keep the hearing open. And then after the negative declaration, you'll have a continued part of the hearing. And that totally vitiates any concern that has been put in both of these letters. I think that the procedural arguments don't have merit, but if you follow my humbly suggested procedure, they go away. And I think anything other than that would be sort of beyond
So,
cavil by the...
John, you'll be happy to know that that is our plan.
Okay.
And that was our plan
Thank
before you coached us.
Then the other, well, great minds think alike. Then the other thing, there was an alleged noticing.
A great argument that we hope is free.
Then there was an alleged deficiency in noticing. Mr. Swider's people are telling me that they didn't get notice of the sketch plan hearing. We do. I've had this argument so many times at the village. I can look at the tax map. I can look at the code and read who I have to notice, but the village insists that they give me the notice. So, just in terms of any bona fides or lack, here's the list that. Here's the list that the village gave us for notification for the sketch plan. And that's what we followed. But be that as it may, oh, and by the way, as it relates to Ms., who's the other objector? What's her name? Albright. Mr. McMaster was here at the sketch plan hearing, so obviously he was here, he had his opportunity to represent Ms. Albright. But most important is this absurd suggestion that somehow that vitiates the sketch plan approval. It does not. It doesn't at all. It doesn't even come close. I hate this. It's an important point. Matter of Genoa versus Town of Huntington. The notice requirement is not jurisdictional. The failure to give notice does not render the approval void. And the petitioners had in the event that record reveals the petitioners were able to present their views, which is they're here. And matter of Petronella, it's another second department case. I'll give these to counsel. Petitioner's contention that he was denied due process is without merit, attended the hearing, voiced oppositions, and is not prejudiced. So here we are. Counsel for 91 Fowler LLC submitted correspondence. They're here. They've waived any notice issue. The lack of notice, assuming arguendo that happened, and suing Mr. Swider wasn't aware, which I find interesting because I was told that he had had conversations with the broker about this whole process and was very interested. So I don't know whether or not Mr. Swider was or wasn't aware as a matter of, but my supposition is that he was. But he's here. He's here with representation who can, I'm sure, will be happy to tell you what his feeling is on it. Ms. Albrecht was there. So again, I have no objection, and rather, and indeed, I would urge the board to hold this public hearing open until after there's been coordination, lead agency, and a secret determination. And I think that's all pretty fair. And thank you. And we'll work out however that road is going to work to everyone's satisfaction. don't want to become mired down on something where everybody knows it was going to be staged. We'll figure it out. Vince? Bailey, am I forgetting anything? Fowlers, am I forgetting anything? Mr. Epley, am I forgetting anything?
Land the plane.
Excuse me?
Land the plane.
Okay. That's his diplomatic way of saying, oh. Thank you, Mark.
I love you, John.
All right, so, Janine, the public hearing's open, correct? So,
Yes.
before we take comment, since we've been here for a while, I want to take a 5-minute break. And it's 6:42, so we will start again at 6:48. Okay?